Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karunya Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Charanara Vrindam Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananrita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Tananrita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Guru Shri Charanara Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Diramajanado Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Diramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Neyunjatapi Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Juktasya Bhaktamsa Neyunjatapi Bande Guru Shri Charanara Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Kridaiva Tripte Bhajata Shariva Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Kridaiva Tripte Bhajata Shariva Bande Guru Shri Charanara Shri Radhikama Dhabayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shri Radhikama Dhabayara Para pratikshana swadanalopasya vande garashi charanaravrindam pratikshana swadanalopasya vande garashi charanaravrindam ne kunjayono Ratikerisidhai Jayali Bhirjukti Apekshaneya Nikunjayono Ratikerisidhai Jayali Bhirjukti Tatrati Daksha Ativalabhasya Bande Gora Shri Charanaravrindam Tatrati Daksha Ativalabhasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Sachar Dharitena Shamasta Shastre Uktastatha Bhavyataiva Sarve Sachar Dharitena Shamasta Shastre Tastatthava Tataiva Sat Kintu Pravarja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Gurashri Charanaravrindam Kintu Pravarja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Gurashri Charanaravrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Dayam Stuvam Tasya Yashastri Sandhyam Bande Gurashri Charanaravrindam Dhyayam Stubam Stasya Yashastri Sandhyam Bande Gurashri Charanaravrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Satarine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Sata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Oh Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hariyaraye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah Gopal Govindaram Shrimadusudam गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन श्री चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत सीता हरि गुरु वैष्णव भगवत गीता श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुना श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दस रघुना Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Shri Shri Radha Nilamada Radha Nilamada Radhe Shri Shri Radha Nilamada Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Subhadrama Jaya Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Sitaram, Sitaram, Sitaram. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Haribo. Haribo Nitai Gaura Pramanande Haribo Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Prabhupada Gacharya Sutara Sarashishe Mat ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Saramani Gaura Prijana Krishna Prema Bhaktidata Padita Pavana His Divine Grace Abhacharvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patiti Udhar Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Prem Si Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Premanam Sankirtanika Janaka Prema Purushottama Sachinandan Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mavarana Avatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhana Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai Yoga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihat Midanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Radha Kund Syama Kund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrajabhum Vrindavan Mathur Dham Ki Jai Their Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai Shri Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakra Dham Ki Jai Parama Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smati Subhadra Dev Sudarshan Chakra Bhagwan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karna Shingare Bhagwan Ki Jai Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Pramanandi Haribo All glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga Gaur Hari.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Praladadadahine.
Praladadadahine.
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha.
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha.
Shilatankanakalaye.
Jaya Shilatankanakalaye.
Ito Nasimha Parato Nasimha.
Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingha.
Ito Nasimha Parato Nasimha.
Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingha.
Yato yato yamitato Nasimha.
Jato jato jamitato Nisingha.
Mahe Nasimha Vidaye Nasimha.
Bahir Nisingha Rudaye Nisingha.
Mahe Narsimha Vidaye Narsimha.
Bahir Nisingha Rudaye Nisingha.
Narasimha Sadim Saranam Prapade.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Tavakara Kamala Bare Nakham Adbhuta Singha. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa. Keshavadhita Narahari Rupa. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Tavakara Kamala Bare Enakam Adbhuta Singha. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabringa. Keshavadhita Narari Rupa. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Keshavadhita Narahari Rupa. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare.
Keshavadhita Narari Rupa. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Jaya Narsimha Dev. Narsimha Dev. Narsimha Dev. Jaya Narsimha Dev.
Jaya Nisingha Dev. Jaya Nisingha Dev. Jaya Nisingha Dev. Jaya Nisingha Dev.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev. 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 Jaya 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 Gurudev Jaya
Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Jai Jai Gurudev.
नरसिंहदेव भगवान की
Jai,
प्रहलाद महाराज की
Jai,
शील प्रभुपाद की
Jai.
गौर प्रेमानंद
Hari 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 Bol. Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devyai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradidevi Satavatai Namo Namaha. जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय. It's broken. That's not. It doesn't stay. You have to lift it from the bottom. From there, from there. It won't work. Just lift it. Lift it, yeah.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilashi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilashi.
Je tomara sharana lo tara vancha purana ho
Je tumhara sharanala tara vancha purna.
kripa kori koro tare Vrindavan vasi
Tumi kripa কৃপা করে কর তরে বৃন্দাবনবাসী
মোরায়ে অভিলাষ বিলাস কুঞ্জে দিও বাস
মোরায়ে অভিলাষ বিলাস কুঞ্জে দিয়বা
নয়নে হরিব সদা যুগল রূপরাশি
আমি নয়নে হরিব সদা যুগল রূপরাশি
এই নিবেদনা ধারো সাখির অনুগাতা করো
এই নিবেদনা ধারা সকির গত কর
সেবা অধিকারা দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী
সেবায়ারে কর দিয়ে কর নিজ দাসী
বিনা কৃষ্ণ দাসে কোই না মোরা হয়ে
বিনা কৃষ্ণ দাস কয় এই নমরা
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদা না ভাসি
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দ প্রেমে সদাই নবাসী
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদা না ভাসি
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দ প্রেমে সদাই নবাসী
यानि कानि च पापानि भ्रमहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Nityai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nityai Gaura Hari Bol Nityai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nityai Gaura Hari Bol Srimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki
Jai. Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Shatavatai Namo Namah Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Shatavatai Namo Namah Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradevi Shatavatai Namo Namah Jai Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai. O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence. That's within my vision. I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry the themselves of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna prays. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai. Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki Jai. Chaito Darpanam Marjanam Bhava Mahada Bhagni Nirapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidya Badu Jivanam Anandam Bodhi Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnam Vrita Sadhanam Sarvadmasnam Paraparajayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Itadrusi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam Idishamya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitamba jagarishakamaye Mama janmane janmaneshwari Bhavatar bhaktira itukitvayi Ainandatanu jakinkaram Paritamam visame bhavam budau Kripaya tapapar pankaja Sthita dhuli sadrisam vichintaya Nayanam galorashro dharaya Vadanam gada gada rudhaya gira Pulakaya chitam vapukada Tavanam grahane bhavisyati Juga itam nimishena Chakrusha pravrusa itam Sunya itam jagata sarvam Govinda virahena me Asli shabhapadaratam pinashtumam Adarshanan marmahattam karotuva Yatha tathava vidadhatulam pato matpranatastu saivanapara. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki Jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurate She Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunnavadi Patsatari Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of a conditioned life or the period of birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lord on strolling the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause that devotes my service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if sandals me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of a name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures and pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. So give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas, devoted to the Lord. They are just like desired trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Paritanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namo. Jai Ananta Koch Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Shri Guru Pranam Mangalcharan ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaturmilitam
Tasmai Shri
Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatahapatam Shri Rupam Rupam Sahajatam Sahajanam Tam Sajivam Saivaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Sahajanam Shri Visakarivatam Sah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Swami Dinami Namaste Saraswati Deve Mohani Charane Nirvisesa Sunavadi Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shivar Savanabi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagmarvaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti-vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhunestam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannataya Te Namaha Vanchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam. Hey Krishna Karana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Jayatam Suratur Bangur Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarva Swapadambo Jo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Sila Govinda Devo Restadi Mihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasa Rambi Vamsivata Tatastita Kasan Venuswanel Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Stute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Paramaha Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarva Karana Karana Chintamani Prakarasatma Sukalpa Riksha Laksavritesu Surabhira Vipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahmasam Revna Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kanandam Aravinda Dalayadaksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adipurisham Jami Alola Chandrakala Sadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gidam Pranay Kirikala Vilasam Shamam Tibangala Litanyata Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakilendri Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Naviyovanam Cha Vede
Desa Durlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastikoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayora Tapi Manasomuni Pungamanam Sopyasti Yad Prabhada Simya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim Yes Chakti Rasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Daiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasani Anabusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistavanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chenmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis Tabirya Evani Jarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Evani Visata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Yudesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistana Avatar Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pomam Yo Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanta Koti Koti Svasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Vinam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantamasesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Yasya Jagadanta Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Satvavalambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Matayam Asuriya Prani Nam Patifulam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Golokanam Nini Chitamni Tale Chitasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sutesu Tesu Tete Prabhavini Chaya Vitasayena Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shististati Pralaya Sada Vasakti Reka Jayevi Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Apyasya Chitesta Tesa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahita Tapritakasti Hejo Yasambutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Vita Santaram Abdipetya Dipayate Vitate Samanu Dharma Yastadrike Vihicha Vishnutaya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Karna Narla Vajale Bhajti Sma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Sarum Kuba Adhara Shakti Mavalambya Param Swamvartim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagadandanata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kala Visesa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesana Jesa Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitat Pratatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanda Karta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugambinadaya Kumbhatswan De Pranama Samayesa Kanadi Raja Vignan Vinantamalavasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Marudisasya Kala Talapamana Siti Jagatrayan Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschaksuresa Savitasa Kalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Resesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahma Adi Kita Patagava Deasta Jiva Yadata Matari Vavapra Kataba Bhava Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasprindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Pandanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidhati Kinchich Bhakti Bhajam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kama Saja Pranadi Bitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gora Vasevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadvisim Tanamapurete Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purisha Kalpatara Vajrama Bhumish Chintanama Ekanama Irtoyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chiranandam Choti Param Apitata Swacham Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bhisravidi Shirabi Byasta Sumahan Nimesar Dakyo Vavrajiti Nayatra Pisamaya Bajay Sritad Vipam Tamaham Iha Kulakam Itiam Vedantas Te Santak Siti Virachara Katipaya Shi Guru Vastika prayers, Kisha. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire and material existence. I offer my respectful basis at the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing, singing, playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion with his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body. body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves, are for my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet as such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord, are for my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet as such spiritual master. This spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is liquid, drunk, and such. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such spiritual master. This spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. This spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different tastes arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master as a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraja Ki Jai, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 12. Munir Vivakshur Bhagavad Gunanam Sakal Pite Bharatam Aha Krishna Yasnim Rinam Gramya Sukhanuvabdhyayar Matir Grihita Nuharir Katayam. Muni, the sage, Vivakshu, described, Bhagavat, of the personality of Godhead, Gunanam, transcendental qualities, Sakha, friend, Api, also, Te, your, Bharatam, the Mahabharata, Aha, has described Krishna, Krishna Dvaipayana, Vyasa, Yasmin, in which, Nrinam, of the people, Gramya, worldly, Sukha Anuvadai, pleasure derived from mundane topics, Mati, attention, Grihitanu, just to draw towards, Hare, of the Lord, Katayam, speeches of Bhagavad Gita. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Your friend, the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, has already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa is the author of all Vedic literature, of which his works, Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Mahabharata, are very popular readings. As stated in Bhagavatam 1.4.25, Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Mahabharata for the less intelligent class of men, who take more interest in mundane topics than in the philosophy of life. The Vedanta Sutra was compiled for persons already above the mundane topics, who might already have tasted the bitterness of the so-called happiness of mundane affairs. The first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa, that is, only when one has finished the business of mundane inquiries in the marketplace of sense gratification can one make relevant inquiries regarding Brahman, the transcendence. Those persons who are busy with the mundane inquiries which fill the newspapers and other such literatures are classified as Sri Sudra Dvijabandhus, or women, the laborer class, and unworthy sons of the higher classes, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishyas. Such less intelligent men cannot understand the purpose of Vedanta Sutra, although they may make a show of studying the sutras in a perverted way. The real purpose of Vedanta Sutra is explained by the author himself in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and anyone trying to understand Vedanta Sutra without reference to Srimad Bhagavatam is certainly misguided. Such misguided persons who are interested in the mundane affairs of philanthropic and altruistic work under the misconception of the body as the self could better take advantage of the Mahabharata, which was specifically compiled by Srila Vyasadeva for their benefit. The great author has compiled the Mahabharata in such a way that the less intelligent class of men who are more interested in mundane topics may read the Mahabharata with great relish, and in the course of such mundane happiness can also take advantage of Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Vedanta Sutra. Srila Vyasadeva had no interest in writing a history of mundane activities other than to give less intelligent persons a chance for transcendental realization through Bhagavad Gita. Vidura's reference to the Mahabharata indicates that he had heard the Mahabharata from Vyasadeva, his real father, while he was away from home and was touring the places of pilgrimage. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Your friend, the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, has already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So here we see what's called a strategy for preaching. What is the strategy for preaching that Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa or Vyasadeva is using? He's writing a book about history, and it's basically from the beginning of material creation to the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra. But most of it is focused on the Battle of Kurukshetra, where everything is there. There's intrigue, there's political intrigues, or political, you call that, different ways of saying things and meaning one thing, impressing one thing, but meaning something else, all the different tricks that the politicians play, and also about war and chivalry and cowardiceness, and so many different subjects are being explained. There's also sexual things in the story. So it attracts mundane people who like to hear stories rather than philosophy. Most people cannot really understand philosophy, but they like to hear stories. So Mahabharata is full of stories, full of anecdotes and different types of mundane wisdom, and also there's the excitement of war and battle and fighting and killing. But the whole purpose is one small chapter of Mahabharata. Mahabharata has 120,000 verses, but there's one small chapter. It's called Bhagavad Gita, which is a chance for people to hear directly from Krishna. There's Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is words spoken directly by the Lord, and Smriti are words spoken about the Lord by pure devotees. Well, Mahabharata is Smriti, but there's one small chapter in it called Bhagavad Gita that is actually Shruti. It's Krishna speaking about himself. and by answering all types of questions that Arjuna is asking him. So the whole focus is to give the mass of people a chance to hear some Krishna Katha. And that Krishna Katha in the Mahabharata is Bhagavad Gita. Krishna Katha is glorification of the Lord's qualities, name, form, activities, and just everything about Krishna. So Bhagavad Gita is everything about Krishna, and so is Srimad Bhagavatam. But Bhagavad Gita is special because it's Krishna speaking about himself. So Vedavyas used this preaching technique of bringing people who generally are not interested in Krishna Katha, and sort of by this strategy to give them a chance to hear pure Krishna Katha. But in a gigantic book called the Mahabharata, where so many other things are explained, and that's why Vyasadeva, after writing the Mahabharata, after writing also the Vedanta Sutra, after writing or compiling the 4 Vedas and compiling the Puranas, he felt dissatisfied. And he wasn't quite sure why. He had a good hunch why, but he wasn't quite sure. So what happens when you're not sure about something? You have to ask your guru. So Narada Muni came, and who's the guru of Vyasadeva, and he started to have a discussion with Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva asked him, he said, how come I'm not really satisfied after writing all this literature? I have some idea, but I'd like to hear it from you. See? So that is the position of a genuine disciple. They don't claim, well, I know everything already, I don't have to hear anything you say, Gurudev. No. Even if they know the answer, they still would like to hear it from the Guru, because the Guru has the ability to explain things with more and more depth, or at least they should have that ability. And so when he hears from Narada why he is dissatisfied, and Narada explains to him that, look, you spent so much time talking about Varnashram Dharma that it almost eclipses anything you said about Krishna. And it gives too much emphasis on Varnashram Dharma and not enough emphasis on pure Krishna consciousness. So when Vyasadeva heard this, he agreed. He said, yes, I had the hunch that was a fact, but I wanted to hear it from you, because when I hear it from you, it makes more sense. But he said, but what should I do? And then Narada Muni instructed him to write the Srimad Bhagavatam, the natural and only real commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, and which incorporates different pastimes enumerated in the Mahabharata, but with full focus on Krishna, without any deviation from full focus on Krishna. So Srimad Bhagavatam is all about Krishna, just like Bhagavad Gita. So if you want to really understand Mahabharata, you have to read Srimad Bhagavatam. If you really want to understand the Puranas, you have to read Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam is called Mahapurana, the best of all the Puranas, right? Because Puranas means histories, right? And Mahabharata also is histories. So if you really want to understand Puranas and Mahabharata and the original 4 Vedas, you have to read Srimad Bhagavatam, and including the Vedanta Sutra. So, and the whole focus is that one small chapter, Bhagavad Gita, which is a small chapter of the Mahabharata, right? It's only 700 verses, but those 700 verses are so, let's say, pregnant with transcendental knowledge that anyone who hears them carefully with reverence and who actually believes that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes purified. And then for more purification, there's Srimad Bhagavatam, which is highly elaborated, choice, pure knowledge of who Krishna is. Okay, so this was, it says, but the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, parentheses, Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita is pure Krishna Katha, spoken by Krishna himself, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. So it's just like chocolate-coated ants. Sell the ants, right? But no one's going to buy ants and eat them. So you chocolate-coat it. You put chocolate on it. And then people buy it, the ants, and eat them, right? Normally, they would never eat an ant, right? So he chocolate coats the Bhagavad Gita with all these mundane subjects that have some, interest. Like people like stories. If there's a class and it's all philosophy, a lot of people turn off. They're not able to, relish it. But and most of the lectures that Prabhupada gave was philosophy, right? Every once in a while he would spice it with some stories, but he didn't really focus deeply on the stories. He focused on the philosophy, and we're going to hear some of that now. So, therefore, it says here, those persons who are busy with the mundane inquiries which fill the newspapers and other such literatures are classified as Stri Sudra Dvijabandhus, or women, the laborer class of men, and unworthy sons of the higher classes, Brahmanas, Kshatriya, and Vaishyas. Such less intelligent men cannot understand the purpose of the Vedanta Sutra. Although they may make a show of studying the sutras in a perverted way, the real purpose of Vedanta Sutra is explained by the author himself in Srimad Bhagavatam, and anyone trying to understand Vedanta Sutra without reference to Srimad Bhagavatam is certainly misguided. So, the Vedanta Sutra begins with the first sutra, Janmadasya Yata. It says, Atato Brahma Jigyasa is the first sutra, which says, now let us get serious about inquiring what is the supreme absolute truth. And then the next verse, Janmadasya Yata, the absolute truth is that from which everything is coming. Okay, it doesn't name them yet, right? But when you come to the invocation mantra, Srimad Bhagavatam, the name is given very emphatically. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya with a long A, that's Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, right? There's no equivocation. So the answer to the first aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra, let us make an inquiry into what is the absolute truth, and then the second one, the absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. The answer is given as the invocation mantra Srimad Bhagavatam, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, right? And then right away, the Bhagavatam explains, Janmadasya Yata Nivayad Itaratas Charte Swavigyaswarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yat Suryaha Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Pisargo Misha Damna Svena Sada Nirastakukam Satyam Param Dimahi. So it says, Krishna is Satyam Param Dimahi. Let us meditate now. Dimahi means let us meditate now on this Satyam Param, with the supreme absolute truth, right? And his name was already given, Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva, right? So there's no equivocation. So if you don't read Srimad Bhagavatam or hear it spoken by genuine devotees, you will not understand Vedanta Sutra. You will not understand Mahabharata, you will not understand the Puranas, you will not understand the Upanishads, which are the philosophical parts of the original four Vedas, and you will not understand the Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva Veda. So you must read or must hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam to understand those other scriptures correctly. However, to misguide people, Sankaracharya wrote his Sarirak Bhasya on the Vedanta Sutra, as if that Sarirak Bhasya is bona fide scripture. It is not. He misinterpreted purposely. He was ordered to do it by Krishna or Narayana. He was ordered to do it in order to either throw out or convince the Buddhists to go back to accepting the Vedas as authoritative scriptures. Remember that Lord Buddha rejected the Vedas because the Brahmanas 2,500 years ago had deviated so seriously from the Vedic knowledge and were just doing nonsense, doing pujas and killing cows and then saying this is Mahaprasadam. So in the name of religion, they're killing cows because they were not qualified anymore to say the mantras correctly. And then they're giving the cow meat as prasadam to the people. So by 2,500 years after the disappearance of Krishna, things had deteriorated to that point. And when Buddha came, he said, this is nonsense. So if this is the way these brahmanas who are doing all these pujas for money and for maintenance of their families, then I reject the Vedas. And then Buddha taught his philosophy of ahimsa, that the highest principle, he said the highest principle of religion is ahimsa, nonviolence and compassion, etc. So he was advocating a very severe type of meditation system that's very hard for people to do. But, see, first Buddha, when he left his palace and left his mother and father, because he was very dissatisfied, because every time he would go out in the society, he would see people suffering. So he left to find out why people are suffering. And at first, he traveled and got into the association of Jains, who were doing very severe tapasya. And after 5-6 years with the Jains, he realized, wait a minute, if I keep doing this, I'll just die. It's self-torture almost, that type of severe tapasya. So that's when he left the Jains, and he sat down under the special tree, and he meditated, and that's where he had realization of the four fundamental truths, and that is that all life is suffering, and people suffer because of material attachment. And if you get rid of material attachment, you'll be happy and you'll be self-realized. And the way to do it is to follow his 8 steps of rehabilitation or of education, of becoming free from material attachment. So those are 4 fundamental truths. So, but when the King Ashoka became a Buddhist monk, that's when everyone accepted Buddhism in India and rejected the Vedas. So to bring the authority of the Vedas back, Narayana ordered Shiva to take birth as Sankaracharya and bewilder the Buddhists and bring them back to accepting the Vedas, or kick him out of India, right? So he wrote a commentary. He didn't touch the Srimad Bhagavatam because he knew he couldn't juggle that. But he could juggle the Vedanta Sutra because it's a very high philosophy in Sanskrit. So by word jugglery, he misinterpreted the Vedanta Sutra. And if you want to know how it happened, how he did it, it's explained in very minute detail in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We'll go over that some other time. And it's very, only he could do such a thing, like completely misinterpret the Vedanta Sutra and establish a Buddhist-like philosophy. The Mayavad philosophy is very close to Buddhism because it doesn't believe in the existence of a personal God. But Sankaracharya did do one thing. See, the Buddhist philosophy is not spiritual. It's completely material. But it's subtle material as opposed to gross material. So you have gross material and subtle material. So what is subtle material? Well, you have vyakta, which is the manifestation of the material nature, in which it's gross materialism. And then you have avyakta. It is the flip side of vyakta. It's unmanifest matter. When the material nature becomes unmanifest and goes into a potential energy state, and that's called avyakta. And therefore Buddha was saying that the ultimate state is when all atoms come to absolute rest. There's no more interaction, right? And the Buddhists basically rejected the idea of an individual soul. So they are Mayavadis, but they're a lower brand of Mayavadism because they never get out of the material nature. They're either in the manifest part of material nature or the unmanifest part of the material nature. Whereas Sankaracharya did raise it up to Brahman, effulgence, which is spiritual, right, but still impersonal. So, and he gave it, but see, the Mayavadis, along with the Buddhas are cancel culture people. So the Mayavadis say that it's only Brahman. There's no Vaikuntha, there's no Goloka, there's no Krishna, there's no Nanda Maharaj, there's no Surabi cows. It's all nonsense, they said. Or not nonsense, but it doesn't exist. And they also rejected the material world. They said that the material world is completely Maya, it's illusion. It doesn't really exist also. So the Buddhists and the Mayavadis, it's this almost exactly the same philosophy, except the Buddhism only deals with matter, whereas the Mayavadis, they do accept the Brahma Jyoti, which is spiritual. So they are considered transcendentalists. So here we see that unless we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very difficult to understand what is Vedanta Sutra and Mahabharata and these other scriptures. And therefore Narada Muni ordered Vyasadeva, now you write the Srimad Bhagavatam and focus only on Krishna and really, make it very clear that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because if you read all these other scriptures, the four Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Puranas, and the Mahabharata, and the Vedanta Sutra, you're not actually sure who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because there's so much details there. It's a huge amount of scripture, but it's focusing mostly on the Varnashram system, and it's also, if you read the Rig Veda, it basically tells you all about the different demigods. It mentions a little bit about Krishna, but there's so much information about the demigods. And then the Samaveda, which are the prayers that you should say in order to get benefits from the demigods. So, it's basically obfuscating the knowledge about Krishna, and with all the other details that they're giving, right? All right, so therefore, to shift the focus back to Krishna, Vyasadeva wrote the Mahabharata and included the Bhagavad Gita, which is pure Krishna consciousness. and the whole point is for people to get a chance to hear Bhagavad Gita. But of course, it's sort of buried in an avalanche of other information. So therefore, he was ordered by Narada Muni to write the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So, and it says here, for one who is anxious to engage constantly in hearing such topics, Krishna Katha gradually increases his indifference towards all other. The verse today says, the verse today said, your friend, the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, has already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. Okay. So, this is further explained in this lecture, on the first canto, second chapter, 11th verse to the 18th, 19th verse. But in this, I spoke about this yesterday a lot, last night, but there's more to it. So basically, the whole idea of transcendental life is very difficult for people to understand. Where you're only thinking about Krishna, you're only engaged in devotional service, you're not interested at all in any type of materialistic endeavors. It's almost impossible for people to understand that. So, therefore, they have to be convinced. So, in this lecture, Prabhupada is very convincing that one should give up anything that is relative and be engaged only with things that are absolute truth. So, nasto vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubayor apitristo, natas tvanayos tatvadarsibhi. Those persons who are in knowledge of the truth can differentiate between what is eternal and what is temporary. So sat and asat. And they concern themselves only with things that are eternal, sat. And they do not spend their time with what is asat. So asat means mundane life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So the animals do that, and nowadays practically all the human beings on this earth do that also. Just concerned with eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and not really interested in transcendental life. So, and then Prabhupada quoted Chanakya Pandit in this lecture, and he says, Chanakya Pandit says, who is happy? He says, the man who does not go out of his home and who is not a debtor. He is happy. He has no debts. Doesn't have any mortgages. Doesn't buy cars, and gets a loan. He doesn't take any loans. He's happy because he has no debts and he lives at home. Whereas today, people have to leave the home to get a job, to work. And sometimes they have to go on trips that are hundreds of miles away from their home, or so they might have to drive 50 to 100 miles to get to their job, and then another 50, 100 miles to come back to the home. And they have a lot of debts. They have mortgages, they have loans, they have credit cards. Prabhupada says the card is bank card, bankrupt. You get the card, you start spending money that you don't have, and now your whole salary goes to paying back the bank for all the money you borrowed plus the interest. So for people who are in that, let's say, situation of bank card bankrupt, it's very hard to imagine how they could live a spiritual life and not depend on bank cards, credit cards, and mortgages, and borrowing money, and spending money, the borrowed money, to buy more and more things. So, therefore, these are called, Prabhupada says, these are called anarthas, unwanted things. And that's exactly what publicity is all about. It's to convince you to buy something that you don't really need. But they convince you that you do need it. Like the latest cell phone, or the latest car, or the latest boat, or the latest special this or special that, clothing, jewelry, etc. So people are buying all these things and spending money, and then they have to work very hard to buy those things. And so they don't have any time for spiritual life. They're completely involved in materialistic activities. And plus, they're working real hard during the day, and then at night they sleep or they have sex, and that keeps them enthusiastic to work hard more. And the whole thing is a waste of time. It's based on always acquiring anarthas, bad habits, and unnecessary things. So, Prabhupada says, so actually we are creating anarthas. Anarthas means unwanted things. So just like, practical example, anartha pasamam sakshat bhakti yogam ahoksaje, first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th chapter, 6th verse. If one is engaged in bhakti yoga practice, devotional service, immediately the anarthas will be diminished, just like our students, since they have joined this Krishna consciousness movement. They were all Americans and Europeans. They knew how to increase anarthas, unwanted things. It is confirmed. Immediately they have given up the cinema bill, the club bill, the intoxication bill, the gambling bill, and so many other bills, right? Car bill, and the house bill, and this bill, and that bill. Bill means, invoices, things you have to pay, right? And it's very interesting, like, I got a phone call, and this man was calling on behalf of Kaiser Permanente, right? And, he got my name because I'm a senior. So they call up these seniors who are very vulnerable. Most seniors are very vulnerable. And he was telling me how great Kaiser Permanente is, and how if I sign up, I'll get everything free. Right? That's their come on enticement. Everything is free. It doesn't cost anything to sign up. So I said, are you sure about this? Oh, yeah, I guarantee you everything is free. You'll get this, you get that, you get this and that. And so I said, are you sure this is free? He said, yeah, everything is free. I said, if it's not free, I said, I'm gonna reject it. He said, no, everything is free. You don't have to pay anything. So, all right, okay, so he convinced me. So I signed up, right? And shortly after I sign up, I'm informed that because I did not sign up for Obamacare 10, 12 years ago, I have to pay a penalty every month. So then I called up and I said, I want to cancel my my Kaiser Permanente. They said, no, you can't do that. You didn't read the fine print. You can only do that once a year on a for a 14-day period. I said, what? I said, that's nonsense. I was misled. And if you don't do it, I'm gonna go to the Attorney General. I'm a senior, and I was misled by your so-called representative. They said, well, we have the recording of all our representatives' discussions with people. We'll have to look at it and see if what you're saying is true. So, and in the meantime, they're always sending me other messages like, when you're going to sign up with your doctor, and you can get this free and that free. And then I realized they entice you. They say you can get this thing and that thing free, but those things that you get free are minimal. And in order to get actually what you want, you have to sign up for more. You have to pay for more different programs that they have, right? And in the end, they're going to get all your money. They're going to get all your money because you keep signing up for this thing, that thing, you know, dental and mental, this thing. But then all the money you make, you know, but you know, with the Social Security, it's all going to go to them. Right? They're very clever. So they did do the investigation, and they agreed with what I said, that I was misled. So they canceled me. But it took a long time, and I had to make many phone calls to get out of it. To get into it was very easy. I just said yes, boom, I was in right away, right? To get out of it, it took me like 4, 5, 6 months. They made it very difficult, you know. Okay, so these things are called anarthas. Right? Now someone said, "Oh, what are you going to do if you get sick? You know, how are you going to pay for all this?" And you know, they kept calling me up and saying, you got sick, and we're offering you all these things, and what are you going to do? I said, look, I don't care. If I get sick, I'll pay for it myself. Right? They said, well, what if you go in the hospital with a serious disease? I said, well, that'll be my problem. It's not your problem. You know. So you see, they scare you, they intimidate you, they entice you, they promise you all these things. It looks like, it's going to solve all my problems. I'm going to get all these things free. But actually, it's not true. It's just a trick to get you into the system and then to convince you to keep buying higher and higher level protection, Okay, so these are called anarthas. And Prabhupada's saying, so actually, Krishna consciousness movement is so nice that if one takes to it, immediately he reduces so many rascal anarthas, which is not required. Does a man die without smoking? No. You don't die because you stop smoking. You live longer. You die by smoking, right? Does a man die by not eating meat? No, you don't die by not eating meat. You die by eating meat. Say, so he's asking these rhetorical questions here, and he says, "It's by." So how does one get associated with bad habits? It's by bad association. Sangat sanjayate kama, kama krodho bijayate. When you associate with bad people, you become bad, and when you associate with good people, you'll become good. So everything is depending on this association. And he says, by bad association, people learn how to smoke, how to gamble, how to eat meat, how to have illicit sex. Just like in India, so-called gentlemen, they go to hotel to taste meat, cow's flesh, how it tastes. I know personally, some of my friends did that. And now, he's talking about things that happened maybe 80 years ago. Right, so imagine how much is happening now. 80, maybe 90 years ago, he had friends who were so-called good Hindus, but they would go out to a hotel or a restaurant just to taste meat, to see what it's like. So they were not really following Hinduism at all, but they were experimenting because they were hearing from the British and from other people how good meat is and how, the British eat a lot of meat, therefore they're ruling the whole world. At that time, they were ruling basically the whole world. From the beginning of the 20th century, they were at their peak of power, right? And they used to say, the sun never sets on the British Empire. See? Okay, so Prabhupada says, these are all anarthas. So Sutta Goswami said that if you want to reduce your anarthas, which are not wanted, then you engage yourself in devotional service to the Lord, then immediately, directly, the anarthas will be diminished, which are not required things. They're unnecessary things. So, unnecessary smoking, unnecessary eating meat, unnecessary illicit sex, unnecessary gambling. And then we have the proof of that is our second panel there. Because people are doing those four things, it's causing the death and suffering of hundreds and millions of people in the United States, and even more people in India and in Europe and Asia and all these places. Okay. So Prabhupada says, here's the medicine. Teach people bhakti yoga. All anarthas will be vanquished immediately. Anarthas means things which are not required. But these foolish people, they do not know. Here is the remedy. They won't consult the perfect knowledge or Vedic knowledge. They won't consult. They will manufacture their own ways. Lokasya ajanata. Because these fools, they do not know how to get out of these clutches of unwanted things. Therefore, vidvan, one who knows, vidvan, vid means knowledge, and van means one who possesses knowledge, vidvan. So Vyasadeva, who was vidvan, one who had real knowledge, the perfect vidvan, lokasya ajanato vidvams, chakre sattvata samhitam, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.6. Vyasadeva has made this Srimad Bhagavatam. Take shelter, Srimad Bhagavatam, and you know perfectly how you can diminish your unwanted things. And the simple process is, as we have already discussed, is Shinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hirdiyam Takstohi Bhadrani Vidunoti Srihitsitam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly continues to hear about him. So, that constantly continuing to hear about him, that is constantly hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam on a daily basis. Right? And Prabhupada says, if you simply hear about Krishna, Krishna is speaking himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Don't misinterpret. Simply hear as Arjuna heard it. Sometimes some rascals say that, oh, Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna heard directly, but we do not find Krishna now, so how can we hear? His words are there. Krishna is not different from his words. He's absolute. If you read Bhagavad Gita as it is, through the disciplic succession, then you are as good as Arjuna hearing directly from Krishna. There is no difference. But if you are a rascal and you engage in interpretation and misinterpretation, this word means this, that word means that, this word means this, this is rascaldom. If you play rascaldom, then you'll remain a rascal. You'll not improve. But if you hear exactly like Arjuna said to Krishna, Sarvam itad ritam manye. Whatever you say, Krishna, 10th chapter, 14th verse of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, whatever you say, Krishna, I accept as the truth. My dear Krishna, whatever you are saying, that is all right. In toto, I don't misinterpret. Okay, so here we're saying in this lecture, Prabhupada is saying the same thing as in this purport today, that we should regularly, on a daily basis, hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam if we want to actually go back to Godhead. Because if you listen and ask questions and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, it will convince you that we should live a very simple life, not accept all these anarthas, unnecessary things, and have time, therefore, and the mental, let's say, attention to regularly hear about Krishna's pastimes and prepare yourself to go back to Godhead. Okay. So then Prabhupada says, so what is the ultimate knowledge? What is the ultimate knowledge? Ultimate knowledge is described Bahanam Janmanamante Ganavamam Prapadyante Vasudeva Samaramiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. The ultimate knowledge is that after many, many lifetimes of speculation, when one comes to knowledge and gives up speculating and completely surrenders to hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then they come to the conclusion. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Krishna, you are everything for me. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Such a person is a rare Mahatma, because very few people are actually really surrendered to Krishna. Very, very few. There are people that talk about Krishna sometimes and even get initiated, but to be completely surrendered to the Lord is a very rare thing. When you say, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Krishna, you are everything for me. I cannot live without you. Even one moment's forgetfulness of you is extreme suffering. And therefore, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, such a Mahatma, such a great person, is very rare. Right? So, therefore, Prabhupada says, so the rascals have spoiled the whole country. He's talking about India. Politicians and so-called students of Bhagavad Gita. But what do you know about Krishna? Krishna is zero, that's all, for them, right? So therefore Krishna says, Namam duskritina mudha prapadyante naradama. There are 4 types of people that never surrender to Krishna. The mudha, the ass-like person who thinks that the only important thing is to eat, have food on the table, and they eat and they have sex and they sleep and they work like an ass during the day. See? So these are mudas. And then there's naradama. They're people who are educated, but they don't use their education to become Krishna conscious. They use it to have more and more sense gratification. So they're considered the lowest because they're educated, but they're using their education only for sense gratification. So they're the lowest of human beings. And then Mayaprita Jnana, they're the people that know so much, they don't know anything. Right? So somebody who studied many different books, there was this once this man interrupted this Sufi, I guess, saint, and when he was giving a lecture, and it was a big room filled with people, and he walked in and interrupted him, and he said, I have read this book, and I have read that book, and I've read this other book. What is your opinion? So the Guru said, I will send you my opinion. You go back to your home now. I'll send you my opinion. So he left, and a week later, one of his disciples took a bottle that had different color sand in it, right? Red, green, blue. So when he knocked on the door, the man opened the door. He said, Guru Dev has sent you this. This is the answer. So he looked at it. What kind of answer is this? The bottle. He said, oh. He said, there was a little note with it. It said, this bottle is the answer to your question. You take the bottle and shake it like this, and you'll see the answer. So he shakes the bottle like this really hard, right? And then the colors dissipate, and it's just gray. Right? So the next day he goes back, again interrupts the Guru during his lecture, and he said, what kind of answer is this? You sent me this bottle with different colors, and I shook it, and it's just gray. He said, yes, that's my answer. You have read this book, you have read that book, but it's all gray. You don't have any real understanding of who God is. It's all just this thing, that thing, this thing, that thing. You can explain so many things, but you don't understand what is the absolute truth. Right? So therefore, you know so much, you don't know anything. Right? It's just like if you ask a speculator to point to his nose, he'll go like this. Oh, my nose. Oh, yeah, it's like this and like that and over like this and coming here and then there it is right there. Well, that's exactly what they're doing, right? They can't tell you directly what the truth is because they don't know themselves. They just talk about, well, Schopenhauer said this, and Nietzsche said that, and Kant said this, and Socrates said that, and then Aristotle said this, and they're just talking nonsense, right? If you study modern philosophy, you start with the Greeks, and you end up with Sartre and all these people. They'll just say, well, Sartre said this, and the other one said that, and there is this thing, and there is that thing, and this theory, and that theory. It's all nonsense, right? They don't know what the truth is. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I think in Kali Yuga also we have if different Acharya came and gave different messages, right? So do we see this as a gradual progression towards Bhakti Yoga? Because even so...
No, wait a minute. You're mumbling a little bit.
Okay, so...
What is your question exactly?
So my question is, so different Acharyas gave different message at different time frame, right? So for example, Adi Shankaracharya or Bhagwan Buddha or something. So we have did 4 distinct yogas in Bhagavad Gita, like Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Gyan Yoga, and then Bhakti Yoga. So my question is it because each, when they came, they preach one sect of that yoga. Like for example, maybe prior there were more karma kanda, so karma yoga was more prevalent. Then other guys.
It's like this in kindergarten, kids learn 1 + 1 is 2, right? And then when they're taking advanced calculus, they also learn 1 + 1 is 2. One time there was this mother and her son. He was going to college, and she was always following his education from when he entered kindergarten right up to graduating from high school, and now he's in college. And she looked in his college book of math, and it said 1 + 1 = 2. She said, "Oh, you're still studying that?" As if she didn't look at the rest of the book, full of calculus and differential equations and things like that. So her understanding of what her son was doing was very, very minimal, right? So in the same way, you start off maybe with karma kanda, but spiritual life is progressive, so you should end up with bhakti yoga. You go karma kanda, and then you have jnana kanda, and you have yoga kanda, and then you have upasana kanda. Upasana kanda is when you're worshiping Krishna. Well, you begin by worshiping the demigods, and then you advance to worshiping only Krishna. So spiritual life is progressive, just like mathematics. Learning mathematics is progressive. But there are cheaters that say, no, it stops right here at Jnana Kanda, right? No, it doesn't stop there. It continues. You go to yoga, and then you go to bhakti, pure bhakti, right? So it's like climbing a ladder. If you get to the middle of the ladder and say, "Oh, this is the top right here," no, it's not the top. There's still many more rungs to go, right? So that's what people do. They say, no, karma kanda, that's it. There's nothing else. So that's ignorance. But there is this yoga ladder to help you get to the top point, which is pure bhakti. So we shouldn't stop on that yoga ladder. We should keep going to the top, because otherwise you can never get liberated from the cycle of birth and death. But if you stop at some point, then you will not be able to go back to Godhead. So actually, karma kanda Jnana Kanda and Yoga Kanda, they're actually incomplete knowledge of Krishna. Therefore, you stay in the material world. Even though, look at Durvasa Muni, he's such a he's a mystic yogi. He has conquered the siddhas or siddhis, right? But still, he became jealous of Ambarish Maharaj and tried to kill him. And because he tried to kill Ambarish Maharaj, Lord Vishnu protected him and threw his chakra at Durvasa Muni. And eventually, Durvasa Muni had to go back and surrender to Ambarish Maharaj and get his forgiveness to stop the chakra from killing him. Right? But he was an extremely powerful person, right? But he was not as powerful as Ambarish Maharaj, who was a pure devotee. So this is what happened with Vishwamrita Muni also. Vishwamrita Muni tried to steal this Kamadhenu from a saintly devotee. And then the cow became very upset and started to cry and didn't want to leave her, leave the pure devotee, be taken by this strong Kshatriya. At that time, Vishwamrita Muni was a Kshatriya. He was not a Muni. And eventually, the Kamadhenu expanded herself into a whole army of warriors, and they defeated Vishwamrita Muni. And then Vishwamrita Muni realized that the Brahma Tejas is much more powerful than the Kshatriya Tejas. So he decided to become a Brahmana. And it took him a long, long time with several failures, but he eventually was able to elevate himself to being a Brahmana, or at least a Raja Rishi, So we see that spiritual life is progressive. But if you stop in the middle of it and say, this is the top point, that's illusion. Most people stop, and they stay in the material world. So therefore, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Yanavamam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sadurlabaha. After many, many lifetimes, births and deaths of speculation, if one comes to the conclusion, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Krishna, you are everything for me, Sa Mahatma Sadurlabha, such a person is very rare. Most people don't get to that point. So we should, but Krishna consciousness and Lord Chaitanya's mercy, he made the process easy to get to that point. You simply chant Hare Krishna, dance, and take and prasadam, and go on Sankirtan, and listen every day to Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow, get initiated properly and engage in worshiping the deity. You go back to Godhead easily. You don't have to do what Vishwamrita Muni did. He had to meditate for 60,000 years. Yeah, they were living 100,000 years at that time. Yeah. 60,000 years, and he had several failures on the way. So it kept, increasing the time that it took him to become a Brahmana. Lord Chaitanya has made it very easy, but people don't want to hear about it. They want the anarthas. Haribo, all glories to Prabhupada. They want the cars, the houses, the boats, the 401ks, and the anxiety.
Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bandha Mohi Savadhana Mate
Mando Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Janara Prasade Mai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Aikya
Guru Mukha Padma Vaikya Chittete Koriya Aikya
Aruna Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Je Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Sa
Chakshudan Dilo Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Chakshudan Dil Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Divya Gyan Hirde Prakashito
Divya Gyanidhi Prakashito
Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasha Jaite
Prema Bhakti Jahate Avidya Vinasa Jate
Vede Gai Jahara Charito
Vede Gaya Janara Charito
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhana Janara Bandhu
Lokenath Lokera Jivana
Lokenath Lokera Jivana
Ha ha Prabhu Karo Daya Deho More Pad Chaya
Ah Prabhu Kura Daya Deya More Padachaya
Ebe Jaz Gushuk Tribhuana
Lokena Jivana
Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami iti namine.
Namah Om Vishnupadaya.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashata Deshatarine.
Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashata Deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Satya Desatarine.
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nityai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol.
Oh,
जय शिला प्रभुपाद की जय.
Jayo Vishampad Varamahansa Paravajigatas Tatara Satarashi Shishimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Pram Mr. Gohoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sidvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Granth Raja Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain
The
pure
pure devotion service. I bow down to lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By His grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is a perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From Him, ecstatic prema emanates. By Him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the lost and master of the devotee. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet, and your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take the shelter of the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Then we just do the pranam prayers for Prabhupada.